You're listening to the Mindful Mama Podcast, episode 86. Today we're talking about how to stop yelling at your kids. Welcome to the Mindful Mama Podcast. Here it's about becoming a less irritable, more joyful parent. At Mindful Mama, we know that you cannot give what you do not have. And when you are thriving, when you have calm and peace within, then you can give it to your children. I'm your host, Hunter Clarke-FIELDS, Mindfulness Mama Mentor. I coach overstressed moms on how to cultivate self-awareness in their daily lives and to take family and life to a new level of awakening. I've been practicing yoga and mindfulness for over 20 years. I'm the creator of the Mindful Parenting course, and I'm the mom of two girls, ages 7 and 10. Thank you so much for being here today, my friend. I am so glad you're here. This episode is an interview with Sheila McCraith, author of Yell Less, Love More, the creator of the Orange Rhino Challenge, and she and her efforts to stop yelling for, I think in the end, she did it for something like 500 days straight, which is amazing. So we're going to talk all about how to stop yelling today. So I'm so glad you're here, and I'm so grateful for your presence here. Before we dive in, I want to thank Margaret GB and Amber Sue for the 5-star reviews on iTunes. Thank you so much, you guys. I love what you wrote. It makes me feel so good to hear about that. Margaret says she especially loved the recent Mindful Mama Manifesto episode. I think that was 82 or 83. She felt that she started laughing because the whole point of the manifesto is to know that our feelings about feeling better okay and will happen. So that's awesome. Thank you. Thank you guys so much for those great iTunes reviews. I appreciate that. Yay. And I just want to let you know before we dive in that the Mindful Parenting free live training is coming up. It's on its way, and you can register now for that at mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. So mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. And you're going to be learning a whole bunch of things like why your kids don't listen to you, what is the parenting myth that is holding you back, and the truth that every pediatrician gets wrong, and what punishment really teaches. So this is going to be October 9th through 13th, if you're listening in real time, 2017. And you can register at mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. So make sure you head over there. We're getting excited and geared up for that. And now on to this episode. Today I have with me Sheila McCraith, and Sheila is a mother to 4 young boys and author of Yell Less, Love More, How the Orange Rhino Mom Stopped Yelling at Her Kids and How You Can Too. So thank you so much for coming on the Mindful Mama podcast today, Sheila.
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm so glad you're here because I love your book, because that is talking about yelling at your kids is something that I talk about. I've talked about my anger, and I feel like it's such a big taboo to talk about your anger as a mom. And it's so refreshing to see someone else who said, yes, I get angry too. So thank you for being open and honest about your anger, Sheila. I mean, that's awesome.
Oh, well, thank you. I mean, you nailed it. It is taboo. And that's like one of the biggest problems is I feel like if people can talk about what they're struggling with, then it becomes easier. And yet there's like not really a community or a comfort level talking about yelling at our kids, which everybody does, you know? Mm-hmm. So, you nailed one of the biggest challenges right out the bat.
Yeah. So how did you take us back? How did you get started? I mean, it probably had to do with when your first child started walking and talking, I imagine, but take us back. How did you get started with your work here?
Yeah, it's a fun story. I have 4 boys. I still do. My youngest was 6 months, which means my oldest was 5.5 at the time. And I had corralled all of them into my bedroom. I'd shut the door. I had, my little activity backpack set up for all the kids so that I could use the pump and feed the baby. And everything was quiet. And then the older 3 boys, which they really weren't even that much older, started finding the extra breast pump parts and had a huge war and battle and were loud. And it was just getting overly chaotic. And the baby had like settled down and I'm sorry, he was sleeping. And I screamed. And then I heard someone outside my bedroom door and I'm like, oh my gosh. And it turned out that the handyman who'd been working in our house the whole time I was pregnant had heard me scream. And that just, a light bulb went off like later that day. And in general, I'm like, wait a second, when this handyman was in my house for 9 months, when I was pregnant, raising 3 young children, I like barely yelled because I was so concerned about what he thought of me. And then he leaves and I'm like, oh, I have no one watching me. And I went back to screaming. And it's like, wait a second, I have these beautiful children who watch me every single minute and second. And they are my audience. They're not going anywhere. And they deserve better from me. They deserve that I try my best to not yell, just like I did when I had the handyman. So that just made me decide to give up yelling, to try to go an entire year straight without yelling at my 4 boys.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah. My mom told me I was crazy. She's like, yeah, you're a little nuts.
Yeah. I mean, 4 boys under the age of 5 or 5 and under, that's a really ambitious goal, I have to say.
It was. And one of the things I talk about in my book is that's just my personality. I'm very much a cold turkey is how I can achieve things. When I was decided to stop drinking Diet Coke, I had to just go all or nothing. So really committing to the no yelling, it worked for my personality, but I didn't do it right out the bat. It definitely took me several tries of, figuring out what are my triggers and getting support in place before I could really go what ended up being 520 days straight without yelling at them.
Wow. That's amazing. So how did you, when you made that decision, the handyman was there. What were some of the first things you did to make your realization come true?
The first true thing was stating it. I told my husband that I'm going to do this goal. And that was step one, is really admitting it. And then I told some friends as well. So I had public accountability, which worked out wonderful because I'd be, about to lose it. And I'd run into someone in the grocery store. They're like, how's that challenge going if not yelling? I'm like, okay, right. So it came back to the forefront of my mind. And then in those first couple of weeks, I wrote down on Post-it notes everything, like when I thought I was going to yell, when I did yell, and I just started taking little notes. And that helped me to see some trends, if you will, for when I was yelling the most. And that set me on a path to, I guess you would say, problem solve those trigger moments.
Mm-hmm. And that's something you do in your book, is you ask people to track their triggers, right? And
yes.
That can be kind of a scary thing to do, I imagine, for people. I imagine you have, you have to have a lot of self-awareness and a lot of, you have to have maybe, I'm wondering, I guess I'm curious about what was like the internal monologue, like, because sometimes when our inner critic is really strong, and many people tend to have like a very, very harsh tone of voice with ourselves, and we're very critical of ourselves, and that can actually make us less likely to grow and change because we're afraid of having that inner critic blame and shame and feel those horrible feelings of the inner critic kind of tearing us down, right? So I'm curious about, do you remember what your inner dialogue was like at this time?
I do know that looking in the mirror was really hard. Like I remember some of those when I had a lot of like aha moments. And one of the biggest ones, one moment is when I realized, wait a second, they're not the problem. I am. It's not their behavior. It's, pot calling the kettle black. I remember once my son was yelling at me. I'm like, please don't yell at me. It hurts my feelings. I'm like, oh my gosh, ouch. Because that's exactly what I'm doing, to them. If I did yell, like in the beginning, I'll tell you the exact reason why I couldn't succeed. It's because of exactly what you just said, how critical I was of myself. I would yell and then it would be like, you can't do this. What's wrong with you? Get it together. Just lots of criticism. And all that did was make me more anxious, which made me yell more. And it just keeps going negative. You don't get anywhere with it. Just like, kind of what you're saying. But then when I started turning the corner, it was, okay, one moment at a time, or you can do this, like a lot more positive self-talk, and encouraging myself. And it did become a little bit easier.
Cool. So that's interesting to hear that I just had a conversation with Kristen Neff, who wrote the book Self-Compassion and did all the research on self-compassion. And that was what she pointed out. One thing she pointed out is that it actually, our harshness to ourselves makes it harder for ourselves to change. And it's interesting to kind of hear you say that too as well. So I want to go back to that idea that you realize that they aren't the problem, that you are. And I think that's like such a beautiful, brave realization to have. But I don't think it takes some steps for us to get there, right? Because generally we think like, if I can change the other person,
right?
If I can make my child just do what I want them to do, then all my problems are going to be solved. So you realize that wasn't so. So walk us through that a little bit.
I don't remember how I got there, but it definitely took a lot of probably experiencing, not succeeding, but this is the story I use to help people understand it. Is I remember breaking up with someone right before I met my husband. And I'm like, you know what? It's not you, it's me. And it was a total lie, right? It had everything to do with him. Like, it just wasn't what I wanted. But, we say that because it's easier. And like with this, it's really the exact, when I say it's not you, it's me, that's the total, utter truth. This morning was a really, really tough morning in Orange Rhino land. I have so many huge stressors on my plate that I can't make go away. And I was getting really crotchety with them. And I just stopped. I'm like, Sheila, the fact that they're dawdling, tying their shoes, and you're getting annoyed is not because they're tying their shoes. It's because you are feeling anxious. You are tired. You are this, you are that. So that, you take ownership of what you feel. And it becomes a little easier to not yell. That said, it's really hard on some days when you are all of those things to be able to realize that's what's pushing you to yell. It's not easy. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah, even with all that self-awareness, even when you realize it, sometimes it just happens because our brain, our neurons are wired so strongly together. Habits are so strong. And there may be habits that were formed when you were a kid and your parents yelled.
Yeah, no, it is very hard. The last few years, I always say to people, like, yes, I'm the Orange Rhino, but I am still human. That's why it's all about yelling less and loving more, because you are going to have slip ups. And I'll tell you, the last few years have been really hard on my family. And it's taken a lot of effort to be able to have, as many yell free days. But, I remind myself that it is a habit, and, we can get to better. And the more better moments you have, that creates, it becomes a more natural response to have even more better moments, and it keeps going and going. It's like learning to ride a bike. You never truly forget. So I like to tell people, if you have one bad day, you will get back on the bike and you'll be able to pedal and move forward and find yourself yelling less again. It is a habit that everyone can achieve.
So when you made the goal to not yell completely for a year, did you think that you could, did part of you want to achieve this sort of perfection state? Part of you wanted to be like, I'm never going to yell again, and I'm going to make myself into that mama that I wanted to be. Right.
That's a great question. I don't think so. I want to say that I knew I was very much a critic of myself when I started, and I still am. I am my worst critic, and that's it's really difficult. But I do think I had gave myself enough grace to know that I might slip up and that would be okay. Mm-hmm. But I really did. I didn't want yelling in my life anymore. I don't want yelling in my life. I've seen kids be yelled at, and it makes my own, like, not my situation, but it makes my heart cringe. I saw some adults in my life yelling when I grew up, and it made me cringe. I don't want to be that person. I know how it feels to be yelled at. Actually around the time that I started this challenge, I had been yelled at and chided and criticized by an adult, and it felt awful. So yeah, I did want it as much out of my life as possible.
Yeah. So tell us where, because for people who are unfamiliar with the work, they're like, so what's the deal with the orange rhino?
I love this. This is all credit to my oldest son, who is so wonderfully creative and sarcastic and funny. I had started the challenge loosely, and I didn't even have the name yet. And I really wanted to come up with a symbol or something that could remind me of my goal, so that if I was stuck and I saw it around the house, or like a mantra, it would get me back on track. And so one day I just got all the kids buckled into the minivan, which I think we all know is a feat. And we were kind of on time. And my oldest son, yelled in my face, and I looked at him calmly, and I'm like, dude, if I can't yell, what does that mean for you? And he's like, well, I can't yell, but I can still pick my nose, because he was picking his nose at that time. And I'm like, okay, that's actually really funny. So I Googled pick your nose, and it came up with rhinoceros, because, and if you learn about rhinos.
Wait. Why does Googling, why does
I had
your nose?
Because people get, you get rhinoplasties, you get nose.
Okay.
Yeah. So I wouldn't have expected that. So rhinos are naturally calm animals that charge when provoked, which was just profound. It could not be a more perfect symbol for my journey, because we all have calm within. I would not describe myself at the start of this as a calm person. There's some people you meet, like, they are just calm. That's not necessarily me, but I know I have it within me, because there's times when I am really cool, calm, and collected. But when I'm provoked or triggered, I charge with my words. Words hurt. We teach our children that, right? Words really can hurt. So I decided I didn't want to be a gray rhino anymore, and I wanted something uplifting. So I chose the color orange, for like its determination and energy, and a lot of just positive around it. And then the really cool thing, which a reader pointed out to me, is if you put orange rhino into one word, anger is in the middle.
Oh yeah, it is.
Totally unintentional. Kind of cool though, because that's really a lot of what, when we're yelling, a lot of it is anger. I'm angry at myself, or I'm angry at my husband, or I'm angry that this happened or that happened. So a lot of the journey has been about, managing my own anger.
So how did you learn to manage your anger? You dove into this challenge. You said, I'm not going to have this outlet of yelling that I used to have. So anger is an energy, right? That needs to be taken care of. There's stuff, there's beliefs, there's, maybe hurts and wounds underneath that anger. There's all this stuff going on with that. So what did you do with the energy of your anger?
I think I'm not going to say I lucked out. I've learned along the way that what I did, it was part of what was working, wasn't necessarily intentional. But so as I tracked my triggers, I started learning trends about when I was yelling. And I also, kind of saw when I wasn't. And that helped me realize, okay, exercise, like I need exercise. If I'm exercising, I'm in a better place. I need fresh air. I need X amount of sleep. I need to eat healthy. I need to drink water. And so actually all of those things I learned throughout the process really helped me to be in a good place. So the anger wasn't fed, so to speak. I also, in the beginning, I just got really creative and I did anything I could to not yell in the moment. And it turned out a lot of what I was doing was silly stuff. And people will read my book who don't know my story, and they're like, you're just ridiculous. Like, this is baloney. But the truth is, laughter is powerful. Dr. Laura Markham talks about how it's a great way to connect with children. So we did a lot of like laughing. I would, instead of screaming, rah, I would just be like, ooga shmooga booga. So I'd still release, because you really do need to release.
Yeah.
That is, yelling does have that. It's because you got to let something out. So I'd say really funny words, or, exercise in the house, like jumping jacks, anything that's like really, good weight, like doing push-ups is a great thing to do. Singing, just a lot of different ways to kind of de-stress my body.
Yeah. You got this great picture of yourself doing push-ups in your book.
Yes. Yeah, I was looking at some of those pictures today, and also I will say, one of the other things is I was writing, and writing is a great way. People are like, oh, her book is a journal, but that journaling is proven to be a really powerful tool in just in managing emotions. And so by writing and having an outlet, it helped me process. So I think my anger or any frustrations I was having were going into my blog instead of out to my children.
Yeah, that's great. Well, it's really interesting because your story really points out, I say all the time that like your self-care is not selfish. It's actually your responsibility.
Yes.
And
yes.
that people, we live under the weight of this stupid, self-sacrificing mom idea and meme that really harms moms, it harms families, because when we sacrifice our own needs, like your needs for exercise, fresh air, water, all those things, then you're crap for everybody else, right?
Yes.
It's You're really, what you're talking about is this sort of learning that this is your responsibility to take care of your own needs is a responsibility that you have, right?
Yeah, it's huge. I think one of my biggest challenges the last couple of years is that self-care has been incredibly difficult for lots of different reasons. And it's just, all it's done is proven to me how important it is. Mm-hmm. I'm a recently single parent, and self-care has become a lot more difficult. Yeah. And it's needed, but that's also, the upside is I think a lot of people hear the word self-care and we think big, right? Like, oh, I need to maybe go get a massage, or I need a night out. And I'm learning that self-care can be as simple as sitting on my porch chair, like in the morning with a cup of hot coffee for a whopping minute. If I get a minute without the kid following me, that minute is self-care. Like it's taken me a little bit of creativity, blow drying my hair just so I can feel a little more humane. That's self-care. It's, there's different ways to get it, but it's necessary.
Yeah. And it's a shame that it's a shame that it's so like, it's the same shame that we're so unsupported in so many ways. Like our family, we're so separate in the way just our society's evolved, that we're all like in our own individual little houses. And, it's like back in the day, you'd be like, oh, here, go with this friend, go with this auntie who's sitting like 3 doors away from you, and just, right. I'm going to go for a walk or whatever it is,
Right.
Yeah. So, I mean, there's so many sort of issues wrapped up in that, but I want to kind of go back to your book. And I'm curious about, you had a very clear, like, delineations of what was yelling and what was not yelling. So what was acceptable and what was not acceptable. So can you tell us a little bit about your challenge and the details of your challenge?
Yeah. I mean, I think everyone's like, well, what's a yell?
Yeah.
Which is a great question. Like, a yell to me might not be a yell to someone else, but my basic point was, how did I feel afterwards? I pretty much knew when I had yelled based on how I felt afterwards, how maybe like remorseful I felt. If I was shaking afterwards, that was a dead, that was a dead giveaway. I like to call it the raging scream in my book. It. There's the nasty snap we all do, but then catch ourselves like, darn it. I'm like, okay, that might not be a yell. That's like a warning, like, okay, gotta like take a step back. But it's interesting as I've gotten, as time has passed and I get different views of the challenges. Children perceive a yell totally different than I do.
Mm-hmm.
That snap to the child probably feels like a yell.
Mm-hmm.
Like simply using a tone. Maybe I'm not loud, but a really nasty tone achieves the same thing as yelling, or your words. Even if you're like, talking like this and you say something really mean, guess what? That has the same negative impact as yelling.
Yeah. My daughter, sometimes she'll be like, you yelled at me. I was like, no, I was raising my voice. And I'm like, no, because it's interesting because when we start to go on this path of becoming sort of more, more peaceful or more conscious in our parenting, and then our kids become, they become more sensitive to like the subtler variations.
Right.
Yeah. And you're like, wait a second, you don't even know. That's not even,
When I said something to one son and the son replied, "You yelled at me," and my other one chimed in, "That wasn't a yell. That was just a very firm voice." So they get the nuances, which is one of the other like benefits of the challenge, right? Is that I'm not always perfectly, but I'm teaching my children about how to treat people or how to respond if how to respond or even not respond. Like I have screwed up. I'm not even going to call it screwed up because I'm human. I have yelled and I've had the opportunity to turn around and apologize to my children and talk about it, which is great, and they've seen me what I'm like. I try to talk out loud, like the other day, I really feel like I'm going to yell. I'm feeling blank, 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 and blank. So I'm going to blank, and I'm hoping that they can take from that how to manage their own emotions a little bit.
Well, yeah. I mean, even your whole challenge taught them so much, right? It taught them that you can make big changes and you can get help and you can start to make shifts like that. But then also beyond your challenge, your imperfection is a great lesson too, because it's hard. It's impossible to live up to perfection. Like perfection is in reality never good enough, right? Like that's what perfection is. And so for you to be human and yell once in a while, but obviously having at this sort of reduced rate, I kind of think of you as like kind of there's like prohibition and then there's post prohibition, right? Right. And people actually do drink a lot less post prohibition, right? But like, yeah, like you're showing them, that what to do when you're human and you get triggered and you reconnect, and that's also a great lesson too. You don't have to be perfect and never yell to have kind of the same effect, right?
Yeah, I mean it's neat actually. I did one of my sons is struggling a lot right now, and so we have a kind of a chart up to help him see that he's doing good throughout the day, because it's hard to notice that. And I actually have little orange rhinos on paper clips, or I'm sorry, on clothespins. So when he does something, I catch him being really nice because he doesn't necessarily see it. I move the orange rhino forward. And if he has maybe a little bit of a moody moment, we do a gray rhino, just kind of is on the board. And I have one too. And the whole point is I'm proving to him, look, you might have had a bad moment, but look at all of the orange moments you've had, to help him see that the goal is, yelling less and loving more. Like one of my favorite images, I'm not sure it made it into the book, is a scale. And the whole idea is just to have one end of the scale really high with a lot of positive, loving memories. And the other end is still going to have some not so good memories, but you want to outweigh them with the good. That's it. It's not about being perfect. It's just about where the balance lays.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So what did you, and I like that too, because you're kind of teaching them about their innate natural negativity bias, and you're giving them this incredible life skill, which is to like, actually, let's look at what is good, and that's a practice that isn't as easy as seeing what's bad because of our negativity bias. So that's really great. So I was going to ask you, so other people joined you on the challenge, right? Because you were doing this on your blog and it had got a lot of traffic, et cetera. Like, tell us about that.
Yeah, the community, everyone needs a community. And that was actually another reason why I was able to succeed, is just having the support. But I've blogged almost every day, I think for the full year. And I had a Facebook page and just encourage people to come along and try their own thing. And, going back to what we first talked about, I think the biggest benefit of me sharing was that I was trying to make it no longer taboo. And I think other people were able to then turn around and be like, I'm going to try this at home. And they started talking about with their friends. And I encouraged people. I said, if you're struggling and you're afraid to tell a friend, I guarantee if you tell a group of like, say 5 girlfriends or whatever, one person is going to be relieved and be like, me too. And then you have a support person that you call when you're frustrated. So I did, I shared online about, what I was learning. And then it kind of culminated. I wrote an article for Huffington Post, 10 things I learned when I stopped yelling at my kids. And that really resonated with a lot of people, and it took off. And that, I think, encouraged even more people to look at themselves and say, wait a second, maybe I can, yell less.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. So what did you discover? What were your triggers? What were your biggest triggers that were, because really what you're pointing out is a different way of saying like mindfulness, a different way of saying self-awareness, right? You're just really saying, how do I become aware of what, rather than being in it? How do I get a little perspective from it? So what did you discover?
Sleep. Everyone says it. It sounds cliche, but it is absolutely true. The days where I haven't been able to sleep well, those mornings are infinitely harder. I'm operating on maybe a couple hours of sleep lately, and it's really, really hard. Clutter, which is something that I think a lot of people also resonated with. It just made me feel overwhelmed and even claustrophobic at times. So that was something that I'm like, okay, just 5 minutes a night. That's how I'm going to solve that problem. Let's just like tidying it up. Noise. 4 boys turn out to be really loud. Really, really loud. Didn't realize how sensitive I was to noise until I became a mom. That's something that just gets me feeling irritable. It becomes a lot. And then, the other things are the unspoken things that you don't realize are eating at you. One of my steps in my book is accepting the things you can't change are the big things. You don't necessarily see that they're eating away at you inside, so for some people it might be they're having a silent fight with one of their friends. They don't realize how much it's bothering them. Or, for me, I've been divorced a certain amount of time, but there's still pain from that. Right. And that kind of hangs around, and it might not be present every day, but it's taking up part of your mind, which makes you cranky. So one of the steps is trying to figure out what is going on. What are those unseen triggers that aren't so obvious?
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because when we're triggered, like, our lower brain, right? Like in the sort of neuroscience of it, right? Like our lower brain actually ends up sort of cutting off access to that thinking brain, right? And it makes it so we're very reactive. It's just evolutionary, right? This is how we evolved. And so how did what was your strategy to become less reactive in those moments? Or did you just like, what I'm getting from you is that you just like went cold turkey and I'm just going to stop the yelling, and you just, I'm really curious about that.
It truly was cold turkey, and I'm just going to try to see what works and what sticks. I find for me, reading a lot of information can be overwhelming. Mm-hmm. And then I get stuck trying to be like, oh, I should do this, I should do that. So I kind of I'm going to go clean slate and see what works. And, one of the biggest things was talking to myself in my head, like, okay, I got this. Like in the morning, right? They're all screaming and it's chaos and we just got to get to school on time. And it's like, okay, you just have 30 minutes. 30 minutes, you can get through 30 minutes. Okay, you only have 10 minutes left. You got this. A lot of that, like just breaking it down into smaller things. And the other thing that really helped is I made orange Rhino signs for my boys. Because again, going back to the idea that they are my audience. I mean, our children can sense our mood much more than we give them credit. They are the front row seat of mommy starting to get cranky. They can probably sense it in my facial expressions or whatever you want to call it. So I made little orange Rhino signs for them. And if they sensed I was starting to get cranky, they would hold it up, which just brought to my attention. It just kind of, I don't want to say snapped me out of it, but helped me, get to a more focused place. I also gave them permission to say orange Rhino to me, just call it out, which again helped me to focus on, who I wanted to be in that moment.
Wow, that's so cool. Your boys were like on the team. They were like, this is a good goal that mom
yeah. They totally embraced it. And some people have said to me, well, is that really the right move to give your children that kind of power? Did they abuse it or this or that? And I said, you know what? They might have tried it in the beginning, like maybe once or twice to just have fun with it. But then they really realized how great it was that I wasn't yelling, and it became a team effort. It wasn't just mom was trying to not yell. As a group, they were trying to support me, which I think is an awesome thing to teach our children, and showing that, again, to your point, like I'm not perfect. That's great to show our children that we have emotions and we can talk about them. Awesome. Our kids, all boys and girls, need to know that that's okay. So I loved that they were involved. I think it was a great learning lesson for them.
Yeah, I think so too. When I work with moms and I invite people to talk to people about your intentions, talk to people about your goals, because talk to your kids about it, because they'll help you, it's really great, mommy, you're yelling.
Yeah, I know. It's hard not to snap at that moment. Like, oh, I know, you just kind of, but it's when you have this beautiful face that's like sweet looking at you, reminding you, it's like, right. I know what my goal is. It's right in front of me.
Yeah.
And again, children are awesome. They'll follow you everywhere. So they are a constant reminder.
Yeah. Yeah. And that intention, and you have the Post-its and things like, so what do you take now sort of from that year? What do you take now as you're kind of in these sort of maintenance phase of orange Rhino-ness?
So, definitely self-care.
Yeah.
Without a doubt. Knowing that I need to take care of myself before I can take care of them the way I want to. So I'm spending a lot of time, like that's a lot of where my focus is right now. How can I help myself be more relaxed under the high stress? How can I manage my stress more? That I would say is one thing. Another one of the things is grace. One of my friends taught me that concept is just being more kind and loving to myself. And if I'm having a crotchety moment, or I'm starting to get towards going down the gray orange Rhino land, just saying, hey, you can do this. And yes, you had a bad moment, but you have another opportunity tomorrow, or even you're going to have another opportunity in 30 minutes when you try to do homework with them. Kids give us a lot of opportunities to practice not yelling. So, that's another thing. Like tomorrow's a new day. I think that's really important. So I just don't get stuck harping on myself, because it's not going to go anywhere. And then the other takeaway is the one upside to yelling is that it is a red flag that something's going on that needs attention in your life. And I know that if I've had a day where I really yelled, something's unresolved in me that I need to figure out and take care of. It's stinky. Those moments, it's really hard when you have because I do not yell a lot. Again, I'm open that I am not flawless, anymore. I did my straight days without yelling. And I think the beauty of that is knowing that I could not yell forced me to figure out how to not yell, because I had no escape. So now that I've done that, I have more tools to get back on if I do find myself yelling. So it's I'm not perfect, and having to look at myself on the days and realizing that something's going on is really, it's hard, but it's good, because you work it out, and then you're in a better place than where you were.
Yeah. You're yelling as your teacher, right? It's teaching you something. There's a place to grow there. Yeah, absolutely. I love that. So Sheila, for people who are listening and they're like, oh, I'm yelling too much and I want to stop yelling, where do you suggest people start?
I would say my book, and not because I wrote it. I have read my book numerous times in the last couple of years. And the reason I say it is it's broken down into 30 days. So you don't have to do a bunch of it. You don't have to overwhelm yourself, just to kind of one step at a time, but it walks you through, okay, here's how we're going to track our triggers. And there are some sheets in the back of the book that you can just kind of use as a starting point. There's an orange rhino you can cut out and put on like popsicle sticks. And also just a bunch of tips, but mostly it walks you through like the basic kind of framework that I ended up using to find myself yelling less. And the other thing is going back to about being honest and sharing. It's all stories that I think many of which you can find yourself relating to. So as you read it, you might feel a little less, or you might feel a little more normal. Like, okay, wait a second. I can relate to that. Maybe I'm not as bad as I thought. That's kind of another takeaway is I think like, oh my God, I'm this horrific yeller. It's like, wait, maybe I wasn't as bad as I thought,
Mm-hmm.
But my book is I think it's a great resource.
Yeah. Cool. So Yell Less, Love More. Great book. So go ahead and learn how to track your triggers and a lot of alternatives to yelling. And I love the idea of the stories to inspire, because that is really one of the biggest things that we need is like, we need to remember in those moments our common humanity, right? Like that you are not alone, that in fact, there's so many that suffer in that same way, like suffer this, because when we're yelling, we're suffering, right? Like, yeah. So,
that's exactly right. When we're yelling, we're suffering it on some level.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
We don't have to go through it alone.
Yeah, absolutely. Yay. Cool. So, well, thank you so much for talking today, Sheila. I really appreciate your work and your voice, and your honesty is so cool. So thank you. Thank you so much for coming on to the podcast.
Well, thank you for having me. I love your stuff.
Thank you so much for listening to the Mindful Mama podcast today. I hope you loved Sheila. Her work is really great. The whole orange rhino thing sort of cracks me up. And I'm reminded that this work of becoming less reactive, this is really what we work on in mindful parenting, because mindfulness is that number one tool. It's just been proven by research again and again to help us become less reactive. And we have tools like that. And I also encourage you to grab Rachel's book, Yell Less, Love More. It's really great and lovely. If you have any questions about this episode, you can email me at hunter@hunterclarkefields.com. And I ask you to please subscribe and leave a rating to support the podcast. So you can leave a rating right on your phone, actually, because if you listen on your phone, I listen on my phone, and you just click on the podcast app, you search for Mindful Mama Podcast, even if you're already subscribed, and then you click on ratings, and then there's a spot right there where you can click on leave a rating right there on the phone. So I've gotten some new ones. Thank you so much. And then finally, I just want to remind you that coming up is the Mindful Parenting course will be open for registration just 1 week. We'll be just doing the live course on opening for registration on the 15th of October. And we are going to be doing before then Mindful Parenting free live training from October 9th through 13th. And you're going to learn, why your kids don't listen to you. You'll learn what punishment really teaches, and the parenting truth that every pediatrician gets wrong, and the hidden myth that undermines your parenting. So check that out, and you can sign up for that at mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. So that's mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. So do join us for that. We'll have a whole bunch of mindful mamas. There'll be live training every single day for 5 days. It's going to be great. So please join us for that. And then finally, I guess I will thank my dear loving husband, Bill, for the music. And I will wish you a beautiful week, my friend. I hope you have been enjoying the increased episodes. Let me know if you like it. Yeah, that's all for today. And I will talk to you real soon. Namaste. Are you frustrated with parenting? Do you want to practice conscious, compassionate parenting, but you don't know how? It's not easy, and there's no roadmap for this. Until now. I'm Hunter Clarke-FIELDS, creator of the Mindful Parenting course, and I know how frustrating it is because I've been there. I really struggled as a young mom, and when I found myself yelling and triggered by my child, I knew there had to be a better way, and there is. Mindful parenting is really different from other parenting trainings. They don't tell you that all of their good advice is as good as useless when our internal stress response is triggered. Mindful parenting teaches you research-based tools and practices to reduce your stress response so that you can respond rather than react. And it teaches you exactly what to say so that you can create willing cooperation from your child. You can learn more and enroll at mindfulparentingcourse.com, and you can join us for a free live training from October 9th through 13th, where you'll learn why your kids don't listen to you, what punishment really teaches, the parenting truth that every pediatrician gets wrong, and the powerful hidden myth that can undermine your parenting. Sign up now at mindfulparentingcourse.com/free training. I'll see you there.